Excellent. So we are now recording. So as you can see on your screen, some of you will say that we are recording. So the disclaimer is there. We are now looking at the time, and the time is 2 minutes. Hi, Una. You probably missed the bit when I said turn your camera off.
All right. So how do I turn my camera off?
Okay. So if you look at the top of your screen, you will see a hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you'll see 3 dots. And then you'll see it like a camera sign there. Just click on that and it can turn your camera off. But it's a pleasure seeing you, by the way.
Good to see you too, Una. It's Viv, Una.
And the other 170 people. Yeah.
By the hand, yeah.
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah. Turn
Yeah?
off.
There you go.
Yeah, Donna.
Donna? Hi, Donna.
Yeah.
Viv, one of your people, yeah?
Una is, yes.
Cool. I should have phoned her this morning and spoke her through this. Una. Hey.
Yeah.
I need you to turn your camera off. Is that okay? And put your mic on mute.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so Una, we've got you on mute, which is good. If you could just turn off your camera, and then I can start. So while Una's working out how to turn off her camera, good afternoon to the 186 people plus that I see on the screen. I've gone through all of the housekeeping, keeping your mic on mute and your camera. Poor Una probably missed some of that, but we can speak to her later on. I want to say good afternoon to you all. It is Thursday at 1:04 in the UK. To all of our people that are across the seas, that are civil servants who are tuning into this, good afternoon or good evening where you are. So enough of the pleasantries. This is about 2 people. I mentioned earlier as people were logging on about why this is probably going to be one of my favorite events for Black History Month, is because not only do you get 1, you get 2. So, you know, like in the supermarkets, buy 1, get 1 free. But the good thing about this is also as well, you get to hear 2 generations' views on the civil service. And for those who have either attended a civil service race forum event or one of our fame events or any of the other departments' events which are going on through Black History Month, I'll be honest with you, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to get 2 people who were related, who are in the civil service, who have very clear views on how we as Black people, and I'm including some of these people in the audience who may currently not understand about the Black experience, to listen and learn, but as we as Black people within the civil service, some of our successes, some of our struggles, but also as well, you're going to hear about determination. So I'm hoping that people are still going to rock with me. I'm looking at the numbers. Numbers are going up again. So we've just got over 200. And for me personally, another reason why this is one of my favorite events is because I get to introduce Viv, who during a majority of my civil service career, I've seen at various different events. I've heard her speak. I've seen her journey. And for me, it's an inspiration. I've seen the work that she's done in the Civil Service Race Forum. Once again, one of the reasons which inspired me to apply to be a co-chair. And so for me, with nothing but pure respect for you, Viv, I wanted to make sure that people understood and got the opportunity to see what I've seen in your journey and what you've strived to do for Black people and also as well our Asian minority and ethnic people within the civil service to help push things forward. And then also as well, I can't forget your son, who I remember the first day I met him in Bays, he said to me, "My mum says you're okay." I took that as a stamp of approval. And I'll be honest, I've been friends with this guy since the day I met him, and it really hurt me when he left Bays. Not in, not like in a physical way, but I really felt like I met a spiritual brother who I could just see growing and moving up the ranks and really making some impactful moves for black men within the civil service. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Viv, first. And if you could just let the audience know a bit of your background, and then if that's all right, I'll then pass over to your son. So Viv, this one's all for you.
Thanks very much, Justin, for your kind words. For people who don't know me, my name is Vivian Connell Hall, and I've been in the civil service for 38 years. I've worked in various departments, the longest being Old England Revenue, stroke HMRC, worked in the Cabinet Office, DWP, the MOD, and currently I'm in an agency of the MOD, which is the Service Complaints Office for the Ombudsman. So yes, so that's me. And Justin asked me to say about why I joined the civil service. Well, joining the civil service was not a deliberate, contemplated act for me. I wanted a job, and in the 1980s, for the older ones among us, we had terrible unemployment. Jobs were difficult for young people then, and I just wanted a job. So I decided I was going to become a social worker. So I went to college to do an access course to get on to become a social worker. My tutor was a lady called Edwina Packer, and West Indies was touring England at the time with cricket, and she overheard me talking to somebody about the cricket, and she said, "Oh, you love cricket?" And she said, "Oh, I'm crazy about cricket. Those West Indian guys, I don't know how they did it, blah, blah, blah." So she took a shine to me. So I started the course in September. And in early December, she said, "Oh, you working?" And I said, "No, I haven't got a job at the moment." And she said, "Are you looking for a job?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "The Lord Chancellor's Department, they're recruiting at the moment. And would you like?" I said, "Oh, of course I would." So she said, the campaign might be coming to an end, but I'll come back next week and I'll let you know. The next week, we went back and she said to me, before we start, because she was a little bit late, let me just tell you something. She said, "I actually work for the Inland Revenue, and they are doing a campaign, and this one closes on Wednesday. And unfortunately, I did not have your phone number. So what I did was I put in an application for you and forged your signature." I couldn't stop laughing. I said, "How do you know what my signature looked like?" She said, "Well, I don't. So I just put a signature. That's mine." 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the post. Those days, that's what all we corresponded. And they invited me for an interview and an English test at Inland Revenue. I got the job. And as they say, the rest is history. Here I am 38 years later. So that is how I got into the civil service. So it wasn't meant to be that long, but that's how it worked out. So I'll hand over to Mr. Lindsay Hall.
Thanks, Mom. So my walk into the civil service is a little bit different. So as you can see, there is, one of my forebearers is sharing a line with me. But also, I have an older brother who is also a civil servant, and he works in the Foreign Office. Many moons ago, the ambition for me was to actually become a teacher. I wanted to become a chemistry teacher. And I was doing my year 11 experience. I was doing my year 11 work experience, and I wanted to. Oh, there's a noise in the background. Someone put Mark on mute, please. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I wanted to do my year 11 work experience, and I was looking for. I wanted obviously a some experience as a teacher, but all those kind of roles, like, they went to everybody else beforehand. So I said, all right, I want my work experience to be interesting. I don't want to just, you know, for the sake of it, just take something up in Boots or something like that. I want something I'm going to be engaged with. So I spoke to my brother and I said, look, do you think you can arrange work experience for me? And he was just like, do you even want to work in IT? And I was just like, well, not really, but I want something more interesting than what's on offer at the moment. So he was like, all right, fine. He went, he spoke to his line manager, sorted everything out, and I was able to do my work experience at FCO. And during my lovely 2 weeks at the FCO, the good thing about IT is that you end up talking to a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons, you know. Anecdotally, I fixed Paddy Ashdown's computer at the time, but that's another story. And I went into what was one of the nuclear proliferation teams over at Foreign Office, and I was able to, you know, get some insight from the fellow I talked to about what he was doing and, you know, what, you know, proliferation and counter-proliferation is. And I was just like, this sounds really, really interesting. And obviously the science brain in me was really, really attracted to that. And since that encounter, I was just like, you know what, that is, you know, there's more to the civil service than just IT and kind of like tax-related issues. Like, I didn't realise, you know, government was a massive, massive machine with loads of different roles to suit different people. So since that point in time, I was just like, you know what, going into the kind of, you know, national security, science-based space was somewhere I wanted to be. So yeah, so later on when I finished uni, graduated and finished uni, I applied for a role in the civil service. Obviously couldn't find anything, you know, because it's a bit of a niche, I couldn't find exactly what I wanted. But I applied for a job in base, subsequently got it, stayed there for a few years, and I've recently moved over to the Home Office, and that's where I'm now. So yeah.
So, Othan, before I go to your mum, could you just tell me what role that you're doing in the Home Office now?
Oh, sorry, all that talking, man, I completely forgot. So I'm currently in the Home Office. I work in OSCT. I'm a biosecurity policy advisor. So part of my role encompasses kind of taking a bit of a understand the kind of legislation around what kind of protections we have on, you know, what kind of protections we have and our preparedness when it comes to biological matters.
Cool.
Political security matters, I should say.
Security matters. Okay. No, thank you very much. And talking about security, and this is where I'm going to bring Viv in. And thank you for sharing that story that someone actually forged your signature to help you with your first journey into the civil service. Hopefully no one's recorded. I won't share the recording too far, just in case. I don't need anyone coming knocking on your door, but thank you very much. So for me, I suppose, and this is actually an eye-opener, is hearing that actually you've got 2 sons who have been in the civil service, and being a mother, of course, we know it's about partly protecting your children, but also as well helping encourage them to grow. But I'm assuming around the Sunday dinner table, there must have been a few interesting civil service type conversations by any chance. Viv, you're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. What we do from time to time, when my his brother is the eldest one, and when he left university, he got a job because he's an IT person. And anyway, so he they never been taken advantage of because they were just young people, just left university and all the rest of it. So anyway, he was trying to find a job. And then the guy who set the company up told him, he said, well, listen, you didn't read your contract properly, because in the contract it says you cannot seek another job whilst you're working here, which I thought that was, you know, and he had given me the contract to read, and obviously I didn't read it properly. So anyway, he was just being worked to, you know, illness. And I said, okay, if I were you, I'd give up the job. So he gave up the job. He resigned. He couldn't get another job. So anyway, one morning I was on the job journal then, now of course civil service jobs, and I saw this job. They said they're looking for, they were recruiting, the founders of recruiting at HE or SEO level for what they call professional grades. And I suggested to him that he may want to look at it. He said, the experiences you have had in the civil service, why do you want me to join you in your misery? So I said to him, well, look, it's getting better, okay? It's not perfect. The stuff you hear me, moan about, whinge about when you were a kid, they're not that grim anymore, but it's still not too bad. But just take it until you can find, what you want, your ideal. And we went through the process. You didn't understand how to do civil service application forms, showed him, and all the rest of it. In the end, he got the job like a year later because of the security bit. It took them a year to do his get his clearance, and he joined the civil service. But he had gotten another job in the meantime, and then I encouraged him. I said, well, this is a permanent job, so it's best if you take this. And the whole intention was, when he took it, was for it to be a temporary thing. Well, he's still there. And he doesn't want to leave. He loves his job. He said, I love my job. I really do. And he doesn't want to leave the Foreign Office. So, so that's what, so we talk from time to time. Obviously, the job he's doing is very highly secured. And I also have to have clearance. And of course, with Hotham, he's the same. So sometimes we talk about the clearance system, how sometimes it's biased against ethnic minority people, because some of the questions they want to know about your grandparents and your great-grandparents. And, if you don't have people who are who know those information, you won't be able to get in, because they're asking, if they should ask my son about my mom, he wouldn't know. My mom passed away before he was born. Yeah. So you couldn't answer those questions. So sometimes we talk about the way how that particular process could be modernized, and not so skewed against BAME people. So we do have conversations about the civil service from time to time. Yeah. And I encourage them, just for the people, because I've had some horrendous experiences, I have to tell you, but I've always said to them, I always give them a fair picture, and to say, it's getting better, and don't dwell on my bad experiences, because your experience would probably be different.
So, Viv, I'm just going to pause you there, because I think you're going to give out all of the jewels before I need to actually space out some of this session. But there's two things that you pointed out that I think is really interesting that I'd like to share with the audience. And Maureen, I see your hand up. Give me a minute and then I will pass over to you. So two things that you mentioned. One, about you helped both of your sons understand the application. You helped your eldest son understand the application process and help him, I'm assuming, with the interview. And then he then passed on that knowledge to Otham. And I think there's a really good point to raise, because I do know that amongst a number of our BAME colleagues, some of the reasons why we struggle to actually get into the civil service in the first place is not understanding how to either, at that time, draft competencies, which is now behaviours, in a way that sort of sat within the sort of civil service preference. And so some of us are at a disadvantage in comparison to our non-BAME colleagues who may have family who have already been existing civil servants or public sector workers who understand that. And I think it's a really good point, which is why I'm really glad you raised it, which is about how we within the BAME civil service community need to do more to do that outreach. So whether help our own family members or help people in the colleges or the schools or the universities to help people understand how to draft their application forms. So thank you for raising that. And then to follow on, which is actually an opportunity to bring OFAM in, which is what you mentioned with regards to the security check-in procedure and the actual process, and also as well the different levels, because this was some work that OFAM and I were talking about just before he left, which I know he's got a great interest in, and also as well that I'm slowly getting into, because Cabinet Office are doing exactly what you said, Viv, and are trying to change some of the process with regards to how people complete their vetting forms, but also as well with the amount of information that's required. So handing over to OFAM, if that's all right, knowing that that's currently going on, what do you think that, you know, the Cabinet Office should do to ensure that it's a fairer process for BAME people to achieve a high security clearance?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, something that's pretty important here is obviously to understand, you know, why these people. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. You can hear me. Yeah. Yeah, one of the key things is to kind of understand like why, you know, BAME, specifically black people, aren't really getting through the net, or why they're being refused clearance. I mean, proportionally, I'll be quite honest to say, you know, we know that, you know, most people who go through DV checks will get it as long as they've been completely honest throughout the process, and obviously everything adds up. But in those initial instances where you've got, you know, literally 1 or 2% who end up not getting their clearance or being automatically refused, you know, I think there needs to be an attitude of taking a more forensic look at it and just, you know, looking at it a bit more intimately to say, all right, cool, there are clear cultural differences to it all, for, you know, access to information when you've got family abroad or your foreign connections, you know, that kind of, you know, if people were to say, like, I've got a family abroad and I'm in touch with X, Y, and Z cousin, that really holds up the process so much more, or it ends up dropping people out through no fault of their own, you know, because again, the idea and definition of family varies from culture to culture. So there's some real, you know, there's some real cultural differences that should be taken into consideration or looked at, or, you know, even questioned more on a case by case basis more appropriately, in order to help people, like, you know, helping people get clearance.
Thanks, Sopham, for that. It's really good. And I've noticed that a couple of people in the chat also as well were surprised that actually that they, you know, that there was a difference, or it's harder for BAME people to actually apply for a higher security level. So before I go on with my questions, I see that there's a couple of hands in the chat box. So if that's all right, Viv and Otham, I'm going to reach out to them first, and then we can come back to our questions afterwards. So I'm going to do it in order of the hands that are going up, and not whoever was the quickest to put their hand up. So Angela.
Yeah.
Yes,
oh,
Angela.
is this one of your friends? Is it?
No, I don't know him at all.
No.
I'm just.
Never come across.
Hello, thank you so much for us taking my question, and really it's one to Viv. First of all, such an authentic, fantastic experience that you've had, and I thought if you would share with us, for people who are thinking, youngsters, not like me, more like Otham, who are thinking of joining the Home Office, or, sorry, should I say, across government, what would your advice be in terms of an application form? That was to Viv.
Viv, you're on mute. Viv, you're still on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Yes, I would only say that the process, the civil service process, is almost unique. And so if and Justin alluded to about doing outreach work, which is something that I've been involved in for quite some time. I've seen a Maureen Martin's name on there. I hope it's the Maureen Martin, so she would know, because she used to be my partner in crime in these things. And so that is why it's so important for us in the civil service as BAME people, because if we really want the civil service to become more representative of the community we serve and all the rest of it, we need to reach out to say people from universities, secondary school, and just to give them a picture of what the civil service is like. And then we can then help them, be something of maybe unofficial mentors to them, encouraging them into the civil service. And then you get on to explain the process to them, because sometimes my son explained earlier about when he was going to do his job, his work experience, and loads of kids in his class at the time had no idea what the civil service meant. I can tell you, they were like, "What is that?" So they don't know. And when you try to explain it to them, they think it's something that's outside of their reach. They don't think the civil service is meant for them. So there's a role for us to play, and especially the younger people, to reach out, to encourage others and explain to them and demystify the civil service, so to speak. And so so if they want to join the civil service, is that it won't be something that would be scary, and they would probably find out that it's within their reach and that they can contribute.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for that question. So I believe, Viv, that you did also as well shout out Maureen, who, funny enough, has her hand up as well. So Maureen, I'm going to hand over to you. If you feel comfortable putting yourself on camera, please do. Or if not, just ask your question now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. And my name is Maureen Martin. I'm not going to put myself on camera, but it's more some comments to pick up on some of the things that Viv and I'll call him Otham, OJ, have spoken about. Firstly, I think I want to shout out and give Viv the full commendation she deserves for her tireless work she's done to support BAME people across everything, including kind of growing and bringing on talent in the various departments that she works in. She's done a fantastic job and continues to do it and push the boundaries wherever possible. And we did a lot of that in HMRC, and I think we drove a lot of difference. And I think if we could get more people to kind of engage in that and do that, particularly the young people, I think we've, as lifers or old timers, have done a lot, but I think they need to kind of get involved and really make that difference, because we've opened the door for them to kind of drive that change, influence, and bring others with them. It's a bit spooky because I've got a similar story about second generation, my son joining the civil service. I didn't want him to, like Viv, and he didn't want to give in, hearing my kind of lived experience in the civil service and the challenges we've been through and the fights and stuff, and we wouldn't want that for our children. But actually, with kind of coaching, support, encouragement, he signed up, joined up, and he is a civil servant now, has had lots of opportunities. I promised him I wouldn't embarrass him, but he joined Bays on Monday. So he's in Bays at the moment as well. But he was here, and I've encouraged him that he needs to give back. He's had the support, the opportunities, and he knows how the process works, and give back and sort and encourage others. I think, again, I would want to give a plug for the Civil Service Diversity Internship Programme, because it's a really fantastic opportunity for undergraduates to find out about the civil service and get an opportunity to join up and get to grade 7 quite quickly. So I think that's all I wanted to say, just to echo all of what Viv and Otham have said, really. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Maureen. I just want to come in off the back of what you said as well, and just say, I think everybody on the line here should actually use this as an opportunity to understand how important it is, because it's looking at me and obviously your son. I'm not going to shout him out by name if he's a little bit embarrassed, But, you know, when people see and hear those examples, it should provide case in point as to why it's important to obviously, you know, as you go forward, to also look back and put out as well to bring people along with you.
And my son is on the call today, so he's hearing all of this. So.
Sorry, Maureen. I don't think we caught that last part that you just said.
I said my son is on the call today, but I'm protecting. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think he knows you as well.
Okay, that's cool. But tell him to reach out to me. I'll just welcome him into the Beige, and also as well as Tammy said in the chat, we'll welcome him into the Fame Network if he is interested. And thank you very much, Maureen. I think you raised some really good points. Ties on to the back of what Viv said, ties on to the back of what Otham says, which is another reason why I wanted to really do this event, which is to help encourage our BAME members to start doing more outreach. And if people are interested, please get in contact with me. I'm part of the school outreach program, which I believe is one of the things that, even though in this current COVID social distancing world we're living in, we can do a lot still, regardless of what happens virtually as well. So if anyone's interested, please get in contact with me. So as mentioned, I subtly did a plug for the Fame Network because I have to as a co-chair, and it'd be really good to get your thoughts, Viv, and of course Otham, or OJ. Is that the nickname? You never shared that one with me. To get your thoughts on networks. And I know, Viv, as I said, I had to pay homage and respect to you for the work that you've done within the Civil Service Race Forum. As they say, people like yourself, Rob Neal and Bernadette has paved the way for leaders like Sharon, Tamid and myself and other new leaders to networks. So if you could just, if possible, just share some of your insights on the power of networks, or even why you got involved in networks in the first place.
Okay, well, you've just heard from Maureen. Like I said, Maureen has been. We work together in HMRC, and most of the work that started me on my journey getting involved in CISWEP is with Maureen. So there were 4 of us women: myself, Maureen, Sarah Guerra, and Beverly Martin. Unfortunately, Beverly left us 2 years ago this month. She and we started the what shall I say? We kickstarted HMRC race agenda because there was no agenda. Yeah. And Maureen came up with the idea when they started a gender network in HMRC, and she was one of the few senior BAME women in HMRC at the time. And she said, well, what part would I, how would I contribute? I'd be pretty much lost within this senior women's network, it was, I should say. And it was her idea that we as a group, we come together independent of HR and the rest of HMRC and come up with a race strategy in HMRC. And she really was the suggestion started from her. And us 4, we decided that we would pretty much started the HMRC BAME Women's Network. And that is what then became HMRC Race Policy that came out of that network. And we did all sorts of innovative things. You can see we have reverse mentoring across the civil service. We started that in that network within HMRC 11, 12 years ago. And that has now grown branches across the civil service in other departments, and now is part of the whole setup of the civil service. So we saw the changes that we could do as a network within HMRC, and it has been absolutely powerful. We became major stakeholders in HMRC HR policies, and so so the natural step was then to sort of join the overarching network for the civil service. And obviously, I took that whole work with me after I left HMRC. And it has been absolutely positive. And I think if Maureen want to come back on it, she can come and she can tell you what the situation is in HMRC at the moment. And so, yes, a network, I think network is a force for good. And the first thing I said to my son when he joined Bays, but your agency, I say to him, find a way to see how you can become part of the network, contribute to it, and take part in it. And that's exactly what he did, because I think we as BAME people, we don't, without any offending anybody who might be on the call, but white people tend to always have their own kind of network. It's not called networks, yeah, but it is a network. And the only way we could replicate something like that, I think, it was through what we know now as staff network. And we did, because if somebody has a job, they would call their friends for a coffee. I mean, I've seen that happen all the time, even now in the MOD, by the way. And they would say, there's a job going here. Would you like to, are you interested? Yeah. And so when we were far more a collective during the network, and we did that to just about everyone. And Maureen herself used to, she was the first one to say what we could do as part of the network was to set up a program where people can give people mock interviews, yeah, for a job. So people who have never applied for a job for a long time or applied for promotion or anything like that. And then we set up mock interviews for that. And she was responsible for doing that. So, yeah, I think I think staff network, I'm a staff networker. And I think everybody in the department should, and it shouldn't be, the BAME networks should not be limited to just BAME people. It needs to be opened up to everybody, because that's the way we did it in HMRC, and it was quite successful.
So Viv, thank you very much for that. And also as well, saying about how the benefits of a network should be inclusive. So within the FAME network, I definitely have to agree with you on that. That's one of the things that we've always made sure. And it's actually helped by combining race and faith together, which has now also as well brought in many more people into our network. And as you're saying, it gives us the opportunity to share experiences and also as well, share ideas, best practice, but also as well network, even internally within the wider network. So, Otham,
yes,
I'm going to hand over to you to get your views on networks. And also as well, we had the luck of having you in the FAME network for about, was it 2 weeks before? The other reason why we're all laughing is because Otham actually took over a role that I had formerly done, and I was really proud to see him get into that role as a inter-network lead, and then 2 weeks later, like just got this next job, but it's the job that I've always wanted to do. Really sorry, and I was like, if I had papers, I'd be throwing them in the air now. So, to you, Otham, man, tell me about your views.
Yeah, so my views on networks are, networks undoubtedly are important because we're all pretty much the sum of our parts, really and truly. So, ask anyone, Black, white, East Asian, South Asian, everybody's walk and journey towards moving up the chain is, there's always support. There's always someone who sponsors them along the way. There's always, a network behind them that kept their head up when they were feeling pretty low. No one does it by themselves, absolutely by themselves. So, with that in mind, networks are extremely important in terms of, building connections, having conversations, learning, exchanging ideas, but one of the things I would venture to say is just, with networks, there should be, with formal networks, there should be, a clear purpose, maybe even a clear strategy, if you will. Because sometimes you have, networks within the civil service and, it just evolves into a conversation about, complaining about what the issues are. When sometimes, there's very little constructive conversation in some areas, not in all areas, by all means, because again, you have, because networks are so large, you can't moderate or regulate the conversation to make sure it's always constructive. But, in some quarters of certain networks, it ends up being, just literally just a whinge and a moan about what's happening. But instead, I feel like networks should always have a clear purpose and a clear aim and objective. You should always try and stick to a set piece in order to achieve something and catalyze change a bit more easily. Because if you've got a clearly channeled approach, it can make all the difference. And again, move you a bit faster. If you get everyone singing off the same hymn sheet, it moves you towards a particular objective a bit faster. So ultimately, networks are important.
I like the summary, and thank you very much, Otham. So, both of you, be prepared. There's a couple of hands raised in the chat, and also as well, there's a couple of other questions that have been raised in the chat box. So, if that's all right with you two, I'm going to go to the people who raised their hands first, and then go to the chat box. I'm going to go with Micah first, and then after that, Carl. So, Micah, if you're ready, please put your hand down and put your mic on.
Hi guys. Yeah, just for the record, it's Mika, but all good. My question to you both is: how long do you think it will take to create a diverse bunch of civil servants in like the managerial areas, like in the SCS level?
Oh, good question.
Let me answer that one, please.
Go for it.
Yeah. Well, it has taken time, but I'll just say that we've made some progress, Mika, because 10 years ago, in HMRC, for example, we had the number of SCS, BAME SCSs, for example, in 1999 in HMRC, there were only two BAME SCSs. And at that time, the population in HMRC was over 70,000 people. And at the moment, well, on 2019 figures, that I think has gone up to 8.3% in HMRC. And it has risen also across the civil service generally, even representation in civil service as a whole. I think about 10 years ago, it was about 9%. At the moment, I think it's 12.67%, which is in line with the economically active population. So although things have been slow, there have been progress. And what I'm hoping is, and that people like yourself, Mika, will sort of, stay in the space and to make it better. Yes? So changes have been made. It would not be honest to say things haven't changed any. But they have changed very slowly. So it just needs the engagement of people like yourself, hopefully, who can make sure that this journey continues, and then we really end up with parity and real equal opportunity in the civil service.
Yeah, and just coming off your point, Mom, I mean, in terms of like getting parity, we have to remember not all departments are made equal as well. So, to answer Mika's question, we have to understand that fair enough as a whole civil service, over time there will be a bit more of an equal makeup, especially at SCS 1 and 2 level. But we also have to bear in mind that some departments are way further back in the conversation versus some others. So, for example, moving from base to home office, I don't really have to struggle. I mean, again, when you look at it numerically, the numbers are still not necessarily all there in the home office. However, it's quite easy for me to get in touch with someone who can say, oh yeah, like I know a Black or an Asian DD here, or I know a Black and Asian director there. However, moving from base, it's not as visible as it would be in the home office. And then, anecdotally, I've never worked in MOD, but I'm sure the MOD paints a very different picture compared to those other two departments as well. So, there's two different things to look at. It's, you've got your whole civil service, and then you've got your departmental issues as well in terms of getting that equality and parity.
Well, that's if I may say, that's absolutely a good point, because at the moment, HMRC has got 60,000+ people, and MOD has got the same. Yet the MOD representation at SCS, BAME, SCS level is only 2%, where it's 8.3% in HMRC, although they have the same number of population. So yes, it's different, but MOD is very male dominated and very white dominated and very middle class dominated. And so we need a bit of a real culture change within the MOD, I'm afraid. So I think they're gonna sort of lag some, for a while. But I think on average, a lot of departments they've been doing a little bit better than for example the MOD.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viv. Thank you, Otham. So a couple of hands still up. I'm going to reach out next, if that's okay. Carl, who is a friend of mine, also as well a member of the FAME network, but also as well co-chair of the Social Mobility Network in Bays. Sir, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much. And it's been great listening to you. Really, you've sort of almost answered my question, your response to the last question. I was going to ask kind of what degree of variation you see in the different government departments. And you've pretty much answered that. Is it still quite significant? What do you think can be done at a more junior level? Obviously, you want to see more black and minority ethnic leadership in these departments, and that's something that would be amazing to see. But at a more junior level, what do you think we can do to make departments feel more inclusive?
Is it all right if I chip in on that one first, Mom? I think I might be on mute anyway. So I think one of the things we need to keep an eye on definitely is pipeline. I don't think there's enough attention paid. Kind of like the point I made earlier, which was you have to, as we move forward, we do have to keep an eye on what's happening behind us and reach out a hand as we go along. So getting in that pipeline is very, very important, and retaining BAME talent at certain levels as well, because you tend to find a lot of BAME people come in maybe EO, HO level, and by the time they should be taking a step to SEO or maybe even trying to go to G7, they're probably a bit disheartened, tired of it all, and that pipeline isn't staying. So pipeline and retention is probably one of the main things I would focus on, because if you maintain that pipeline, you maintain that retention, you've got a bunch of people who would speak very differently about the civil service. They stay within the civil service and they speak very differently about their experiences and say, what, they're really trying to, protect us, and they really, really want us within the civil service. Because again, there's a perception for a lot of people who, generally speaking, when you speak to BAME people who don't really get much exposure to the civil service, they think it's, they just automatically assume it's not for them and keep themselves out of the equation. And that's not really what you want. That's where it's, so you have to really, really look back and just keep people in positions where they're actually going to, speak quite highly of the civil service to others to bring more people in at the end of the day. I mean, you can look at it like as almost like a pyramid scheme if you want to.
Cool. Viv, have you got anything else to add?
Well, if I understand the part of what I understand the question to mean is, do we kind of bring on the junior staff to sort of, into sort of the middle grades and so on and so forth? And of course, I think one thing we can do is to make use of the sections 8.5 of the Equalities Act 2010. We could make HR, if you're listening, make more use of sections 58 and 59, which is the tiebreaker clause in the Equalities Act. And what that does is that you look at your population as a whole in the organization, and you said you have got too many of this group and too little of this group. And when you come to recruit, if you have two people who have equal qualifications, equal everything, and in order to choose that, you choose where that you're not representative in that particular community. So whether it's LGBT, whether it's gender, whether it's disability, whether it's race, and then you use the tiebreaker clause, and then you will get more people coming out of those junior grades when you come for promotion or recruitment or whatever. So the positive action clause in the equalities, I think it should be utilized a little bit more. And I don't know any department. I've looked at that twice in the last 7 years, and there's no department in the civil service that actually utilizes that clause.
So Viv, thank you very much for also as well giving us a bit of the legal history alongside Otham. And also as well, apologies if you missed your phone call. It seemed like someone really wants to get in contact with you. And then finally, I've got to give a little bit of extra respect for Otham, because like him, I'm really close to my mum. And it is almost like you still fall into that asking permission. So I loved how he said, "Is it all right if I can answer this?" You know, so that to me is really important about showing respect for our elders. Now, apologies. I'm trying to keep track of the time. We've got 7 minutes and we've got a number of questions that have been popping up. So if this is all right, as I ask you the questions, do this in a succinct fashion. Answer as quickly as you can, because I also as well want to try and save a bit of space for you, Viv, to talk about education and how you earn getting your doctorate whilst your children still working. So, question, Tamid, my friend, has put up, he'd love to hear from you, Otham. How's it like having Viv as a mother? You see the link that I said about respect? Who is really passionate in this agenda, and you can tell that. And whether that made it feel hard to sort of come out of her shadow, and also as well create a path of your own.
Well, to be honest with you, it's, you know, it does often feel a bit like Icarus flying too close to the sun with his wax wings. You know, I feel like I can quite easily be outshone by this amazing creature that put me on this earth. However, you know, we do have to take into account that we're completely different people with two completely different approaches. Like, but compared to my mum, I'm very much more, you know, I'm more brash with my decision making. I'm a bit more, I'd argue that I'm a bit more diplomatic than she is as well. But she probably begged to differ. So, you know, we're two different people, two different goals, objectives. You know, we live life completely differently. And, you know, I think growing up with her, it's, you know, she's instilled a lot of incredible values on me. Wouldn't have it any other way. But also when it comes to this particular agenda, you know, I mean, to speak quite frankly, growing up as a black male in South London, you know, black Afro-Caribbean around South London, you know, people don't really expect you to go in the particular direction I have. And it's quite easy for me, you know, if I went back maybe about, how old am I now? If I went back about 15 years and, you know, I could have tried to take a completely different path if you know, if it wasn't for the values she's imparted on me and the kind of sense and knowledge of identity she imparted on me as well, which again you can probably imagine from how she speaks about everything to do with race. And I was quite clear and conscious in my mind how I kind of had to conduct myself in life if I was to be a successful individual. So frankly, it's not much of a big deal. I'm not gonna lie, I had to think really hard before I agreed to do this talk with her, because I didn't want to, you know, get shown up. But it looks like she's not doing too much showing up with me today.
So thanks, Otham. And also as well, I'm assuming Viv, he doesn't listen all of the time. He did take a bit longer than what was expected, but that's fine. You can talk to him after this. So we're going to keep it going.
He's a maverick. He's a maverick, very independent-minded. Yes. So
you raised him well, so that's fine. You've developed him into a fine young man. Okay, we're going to keep it going. So I've got Kaz, and if I've mispronounced your name, cuss me out like everyone else. But Kaz, this is your time. Go on the mic and ask your question as quickly as possible, please.
Hi everyone. No, you got Cass bag on. That's perfect. Okay, I'll make it quick. So I myself have been involved in what I feel like to be very slight, whether it was promotions or winning competitions, and I felt not only myself but one of my best friends who's been in a similar situation. He's a very nice black gentleman called Sam. We both felt bittersweet about it, where we have felt like we've won something or got a promotion, and we felt like there was a just as good of a white gentleman or lady we were competing with, and we got it just because we were of a different race. That's how we both felt at the time. So my question to you guys is just a bit of advice. Should I not care how we get to the top or how we are catching the sort of white society, or should I continue my passion to kind of get us to that level in a way where we're actually earning it and not just because of the color of our skin? So it was just more, what should my mindset be?
I would venture to say that, you know, I think you should maintain the attitude, you know, that almost any other person in the civil service, not even just civil service, but in the corporate world would, which is, you know, this is what I'm doing, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm getting ahead, or I'm moving into a space that's going to help me. Ultimately, people are quite selfish. People are generally quite self-interested. So, you know, you can't be too concerned about how you're getting ahead as long as it's happening. You know, I know that sounds a bit Trump-esque of me, but, you know, if you're winning, then stay winning. Don't worry about it. As long as you're not running a process or shorting anybody else, yeah. I feel like you're absolutely fine to, you know, stick to your own path and objective.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say quickly to that. I'm yet to meet a person. I'm yet to meet a non-white person who has been given a job because they're absolutely useless. I have never met that person yet. So if you've got a job, you deserve it at some level. And trust me, I haven't met that person yet. So any job you've got, you have earned it.
Thank you. That's really good to know. Thank you, Othman. That's very kind of you both with your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaz. And thank you, Vivian and Otham. So just before I go to the other questions, I have got a question from Ruth Whittington, Otham, who you may remember. You're smiling. Yes, she says to say hello. And her question is, what do you think allies can do to help support? So, of course, support main staff, I'm assuming social mobility staff. And if possible, what kind of practical things? So, as mentioned, we talked about clearance and security. You know, anything that we can do, that allies can do. Have you got any suggestions? And if possible, in less than 5 words. I'm making it difficult for you.
All right. Was that directed at me, yeah?
Yes.
All right, fine. Well, listen and be culturally aware. I think those are the 2 main things. Listen to your black colleagues, or listen to your BAME colleagues more generally, and just, be culturally aware. Try and, you know, engage with other people's cultures, learn about them, understand them, and then from there it should flow.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on, and if that's all right, Viv, just give me a minute. Next person up is Jim. I managed to pronounce that one just like Cass without anyone having a go at me. So, Jim, if that's all right, if you raise your question quickly and just say if you want either Viv or Otham, sorry, OJ, to answer, or if you'd like them both, or if you like them both to answer.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Justin. Thanks very much. It's been a really insightful session. I'm Jim Foodie, very quickly. I'm one of the DDs in the Better Regulation Executive in BEIS. Viv, I just wanted to make an observation, really, and see what you thought, because when you were talking earlier, we were talking earlier about representation at the SCS level. I think it's really something that has to happen, and it's something that I think we were talking about how we can all support each other. And your point earlier about BAME shouldn't just be the BAME network shouldn't just be people from a BAME background, but everybody needs to be involved. And I totally agree with that. I think that's absolutely spot on. The interesting thing is, from a cultural perspective, you spoke about a cultural change needed. I worked at Lambeth Council for a while, which was great. I loved it. And a number of years ago, Lambeth Council had a black chief executive. And it was really interesting because after he left, he was there for about 8 or 9 years, and he did some things really well, and he did some things not as well, in the same way that a white chief executive would. But culturally speaking, it was interesting after he left because a number of people said, right, now it's gone back to a white chief executive. We'll never have a black chief executive again. And do you know why? Because we've tried that already. And I just thought, from a cultural perspective, what a terrible statement to make organisationally. And I just wonder if it's that type of thing that you're talking about when you speak about a cultural change being needed, that type of lazy attitude that, you know, one black person having a job, somehow a black person isn't allowed to be okay-ish at their job. They're not allowed to be all right overall in the way that many of us white people are, and we still maintain our positions and probably get promoted. And so I wonder if it's that type of cultural shift that you're referring to. Sorry, it's a bit long-winded, but I hope it's clear.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Because what happens is, I mean, what you said really speaks for itself. But the reason why culturally is so important is that you'll get an individual, say, you know, a white permanent secretary in the department, and that person is quite aware they've signed up to the whole diversity agenda and all the rest of it. And then whatever happens is just built around the existence of that person within that at that level. And the moment that person goes, everything goes back to what is normal, in quotes. Yes. So once you change the culture of the department, whatever happens then is not dependent on an individual being in post or a few people being in post, because then it becomes the culture of the organization. So, so yes, your point is totally right, that if you give one person the chance to, in quote, prove themselves, and if that person doesn't secure that extreme standard that you've set them, once they have met that, then of course we won't get another one of you. So, you know, and that goes on a lot across the civil service.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that as well. It's just like, you know, to a certain extent, you know, for some reason, because, you know, when you look at the lack of representation, when you have a lack of representation of something and you're not used to it, you know, the very few who you have in those spaces end up becoming a spokesperson. They end up becoming representative of everybody else. And, you know, that's why cultural change is needed, to actually, you know, increase those numbers slightly, so you actually understand what's going on with people. You understand, you know, it makes it clear in the mind that, you know, everybody's different. There are individual differences, and people do carry out their jobs differently. People have good days, bad days. But when you just have one, you literally just look at them, or two, or whatever. You end up looking at them, you know, just the whole cross section. You know, and that's what's really damaging and crippling, you know, some organisations and business areas.
So Viv and Open, thank you very much for your responses to Jim's question. As well, I've got to shout out Jim because he's also as well one of our SES allies. And for me also as well, and I think Open, you and I talked about this, it's about also as well being able to speak to those people who can help influence change alongside networks, alongside invisible, you know, visible, formal, informal, you know, groups. So just want to shout out Jim there. Now, I'm going to apologize to everyone who's still on the line. I have not done my job as a moderator / host / little bit of comedian, because we've already gone over 6 minutes. So I've got one more question that's going to go out. Graham has been really patient, kept his virtual hand up forever. I'm going to hand over to him, and then after that, no more questions, because I need to end this before people have to go back to their meetings. So Graham, if that's okay, I hand over to you.
Cheers, Justin. It's actually Rupert. I noticed Open laughing at the miss.
Right. Okay. Wait.
The name there. It's all good. It's all good.
Apologies.
It always happens. Honestly.
Yeah, I'm mucking up on, and this is why he's laughing. He set me up, man. Anyway, Rupert, I hand over to you, and apologies.
Thank you. Yeah, so I had a question for both you guys, really. So it kind of touches on Kaz's question a few moments ago. So concerning kind of representation at higher levels in the civil service, how much do you see education of civil servants as a tool to address bias and discrimination, rather than kind of the kind of superficial recruitment policies, for example? And then the second part of that was really, do you think it's enough to have 1 month a year, kind of in this context, 1 month a year to raise awareness and education of Black history and experience, which is part of all our lives every day of every year?
Do you want to crack on with that one first, Mark? Or is she on mute? Two,
Viv,
one.
you're on mute.
All right,
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, I've been on this for the last, I don't know, maybe about 25 years, trying to say to schools that because we can't get Black history into the curriculum. So I've been a student, a parent governor. And one of the things that I said during those periods is to say to them, can you then, at the school level, then inject some proper history, make, letting the whole point of having all these holes in history, fill them all in, because it's not Black history, it's British history. Yeah. But then we leave all parts of the history, and those parts of the history happens to be about Black people. And so we need to do that fully if we're not going to get it into the curriculum. And again, it's a long haul in trying to have that campaign. And I don't think that schools where people here are governors, you can get that done within your own schools and get them to, I managed to get in one of Hotham school many years ago, get them to set up an Afro-Caribbean resource center, and that's there all year round. So at least the children could access that, and then they have access to history all year round, or some degree of history. But yeah, so yes, 31 days are not enough, but it is, in the absence of what we need, we probably have to make do with this until some changes are made.
Yeah. I'd also venture to say that, look, like at the end of the day, some of the stuff I've learned about, technically my own racial history, as an adult, for example, learning about the 1833 Abolition of Slavery Act, and finding out that effectively as a working man, I was filling, treasury coffers with money to support the families of slave owners. It's a bit disheartening, especially, and it's a bit disappointing to find out as a grown person. But, I spent a large chunk of my childhood learning about Henry VIII and his 6 wives, which hasn't really benefited me much. So, I think history as a whole anyway, there needs to be a bigger focus on, there needs to be a bigger focus on history within its social context as well, and how that applies to where we are as a society at the moment. Because if you can't understand that, if you don't understand the history behind where you are now and why you are where you are, it causes a lot of problems for a lot of people, and it causes some of the conversation. That's one of the reasons why we're having some of the conversations around race that we are now.
Excellent stuff. Otham, thank you very much for closing the question. And Rupert, thank you very much. Really good question. Viv, apologies. I think we may have to book you for another session. We've already gone over 10 minutes, and I don't really want to run over any longer, because we've still got roughly just over 105 plus people still on the line. So at some point, when you're free, let me know. I definitely think we need to do a part 2. Not too sure about Otham. Let's not worry about him. Maybe let's just make it with you.
Aren't you supposed to be inclusive, Justin?
I'm not saying nothing, but honestly, for the other 104 plus people still on the line, if you can do me a favor, just unmute yourself, and please give a big round of applause to Viv and Otham. I personally also want to thank everyone for still staying over time. and for not, as I said, having a go at me too much. Viv, apologies again because I heard that someone else was trying to get in contact with you. Maybe it's Una. I don't know. I apologize for that. But
No, it wasn't me.
Sorry, Una. But thank you very
Good
much for working
session, Vivian.
Yeah.
Oh. So look,
Yeah,
for
good
everyone
session,
who's
Vivian.
still here,
Una, yeah.
thanks, Una. So for everyone who's still here,
Thanks.
if you're members of BAYS, you'll see that we've got a suite of events for the rest of Black History Month. If you've enjoyed this, please spread the word with your teams. Please encourage other people to attend. I feel that, you know, for me personally, the more people that we can get to move away from their work into one of these type of events, it just gives
Really
you.
interested, man. Really interested.
Thank you for that person. But also as well, it gives people an insight to how civil servants think. And I've noticed that people have been putting things in the chat. I'm really glad for that. I'm hoping you can take what little knowledge, what big knowledge, what small knowledge, what middle knowledge, cardboard box from Viv, from Otham. Please spread the word. Please engage with your BAME people. Please, BAME people, engage with your non-BAME people. Feel confident to have conversations. Everyone, take care. Speak to you soon. Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Justin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Open.
That was brilliant. Thank you.
Open.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, he's gone. Justin,
Yes.
right, I'm going to send you a Teams in a minute.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right. I'll see you later. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.